again, in this video, we're going to review and explore the functionalist point of view when it comes to ideas about why social problems exist and what to do about them. So structural functionalism is the first thing that we're going to discuss. You'll find this in your textbook at the end, toward the second half of chapter 1. Your teacher might have referred to it as functionalism, like I often do in my classes. The textbook, I think, calls it structural functionalism throughout the entire, every time it's referenced in the textbook, I believe that the authors use that term. It means the same thing, okay? Whether you say functionalism or structural functionalism, you're talking about a macro scale theory that is often a viewpoint for many different theories having to do with specific topics in the field of social science research. And so structural functionalism is sort of like a lens that looks at society from the macro scale. It particularly analyzes the links between social institutions that exist. So social institutions is another review word that you need to make sure you have, you refresh your vocabulary there, because a social institution is a macro scale part of the social structure. It is a way of taking care of certain needs that the population has, the entire population, so that the society is stable and orderly over time. So a social institution, there's a long list of social institutions that sociologists focus on. Most introductory textbooks at least discuss the family at the macro scale. We've had a little bit of a discussion of that when we looked at family structure, the nuclear family compared to the extended family social structure. So these norms for that family structure exist on the macro scale and control the way we live our lives on the micro scale. And so that's family structure, the education system, the economy, religion, the government or the legal system, mass media, which like a communication method. These things are often social institutions that introductory textbooks provide as examples to students when they're first reading about this. And so in structural functionalism, they look at the ways in which all of those things in that list I just snapped off are linked together, and over time they're linked to support each other. Think of it as like the blueprint of a building. In the blueprint of a building, social structure, if social structure is like that, there's a whole lot of walls in a building. Some of them are load-bearing walls, meaning they hold up the floor above them, or they hold up the air conditioner ductwork, or they hold up the ceiling, or they hold up something that's heavy above. So the social institutions regarding social structure are those load-bearing walls. They keep society stable over time. And so when we look at the ways that they are linked from a functionalist point of view, functionalists say that this stable, orderly way they are linked constantly changes and morphs based on the new generation of people that are passing through it. As a new generation of people pass through it, there will be changes and morphing that happens to those traditional social institutions. However, in general, society is a stable, orderly place, and those changes always constantly work toward equilibrium so that each generation is happy with the situation moving forward. Essentially, that's what how a functionalist would think. And so social problems exist. And if you are a functionalist, you have to come up with an explanation as to how social problems can exist if you've got this system that's supposed to be stable and orderly working toward equilibrium. And so there's a couple of different perspectives that use this as the parent theory and then offer an explanation for why there's unrest, why there's discontent, why there might be oppression, or people who feel alienated in society. And these two concepts that I have down here, I guess I didn't put a heading on them. When you're taking notes, you should say that these are two examples of theories that use this as a parent theory, a parent point of view, to come up with an explanation as to why social problems exist in the first place. So, social pathology is one of those two points of view that your book introduces you to in chapter 1. The word pathology, maybe you've heard that before. It refers to disease. Like we use it in the medical field. You'll use it in, like you can take a class in pathology if you're going to go into nursing school or medical school or whatever. You will take that in terms of biology. There is a way that you can study pathology, okay? But when we use it in the social sense and we're talking about a macro point of view, we would say, well, society is sick in some kind of way. And this is like a metaphor. We use a metaphor often when we're explaining functionalism, that society is like the human body because it's made up of all kinds of different systems that work together to keep the body healthy. Well, you can say, I used the blueprint example a minute ago, but you can say that all of the social institutions that are linked together that keep society stable and orderly, you can use the human body analogy there. You can say that society is like the human body and these social institutions are like the organs and systems that work together in the human body to keep the human body healthy. So when the human body is not healthy, we call it sick, or maybe it's diseased, right? And so a functionalist will use the word pathology, which is a disease, a sickness kind of field where you're studying causes and cures for diseases. But pathology refers to a sickness in society as a whole, not just this particular person or group of people. A functionalist looks at society as a whole and the effects that it has on individuals. And so if there is a category of people, a portion of the population that's having trouble, that is oppressed, that is dealing with unrest, civil unrest, or some kind of social injustice situation, then a functionalist would say there must be something wrong with the overall system. Just like your doctor would say, I think there's something wrong with your this or your that, and we need to take a medication, we need to have a surgery, we need to wear this brace, we need to do whatever in order to fix it. And so if there is a perceived social problem that is coming from the structural level, if you take a social pathology point of view, you will look at it as a sickness, something that has gone wrong over time or maybe even abruptly and needs to be fixed so that everything can get back stable again. And we even use that word stable in the medical field, right? To describe somebody who is on the mend again, right? Who has recovered from the accident or on the mend from the disease. They are stable condition. And so if we're sick, we have to try to find it. And it's not the you and me level where a functionalist would find it. It's the structural level that has to have a change, a band-aid, a fix, maybe new legislation, something like that, so that something can change and the sickness goes away over time. Okay, so that's one of the approaches you would take if you're a functionalist looking at social problems. Another approach that you would take is regarding society causing, remember, social level is causing the social problem. And so we would say social disorganization can really cause social problems. And wow, do we have a recent example that we can look at to correspond with this. I'm sorry if you hear snorting. Junior is asleep at my feet. So sorry if you hear snorting. Or snoring. That's who it is. Sorry, it's not my stomach growling. It's the giant dog. Okay, back to social disorganization. So we've recently had, in the last 3 years, COVID lockdowns. Some things have been taken away, like the mask wearing and the restricted hours at work and, how many people are allowed in a room at a time and all this kind of thing. But there was an abrupt change, an abrupt thing in the health and safety portion of society that had to change quickly in order to fix what was wrong, right? And not endanger huge portions of the population. And so it caused this fix, for one thing, caused a lot of people to have like reactions to this sudden abrupt change. So it's almost as though you know where the path is so regularly. Have you ever been driving in the car and you have a long way to go and you kind of zone out and don't really pay attention to the pathway or what you've passed on your way, or how long it took, or did I run that red light? I don't even remember stopping or looking or whatever, because you're so familiar with the path that you don't have to put conscious thought into some things. Well, when COVID lockdowns happened, a lot of people felt like, wow, there's been an earthquake and I can't navigate the ways that I'm constantly familiar with. I don't know how to handle this new reality, or the new normal, as people used to talk about. And so there was sudden social disorganization that caused a great deal of turmoil. It caused something called anomie, which is a word that was coined a long time ago. Emil Durkheim talked about how people feel disconnected from the norms of society. They don't feel like the norms apply to them, or that they have participation in or acceptance in society, so they don't have any stake in following norms. And so it can cause a great deal of social problems if people feel disconnected to the norms that exist in society. And so the fix, if you have this point of view, then the fix for a social problem from this lens will be some kind of effort to reinforce the norms of society and create buy-in to the norms of society, so people will turn away from their deviant behavior or turn away from their feelings of hopelessness and work in the system as the system is supposed to work, so that we move forward generation after generation like we always have. A former presidential candidate, no, he wasn't even a presidential candidate. He was in some of the debates years ago. I want to say this was like 20 years ago, that a fellow named Alan Keyes, you can Google him and see when the last time was that he ran for president. I'm not sure. He ran for a nomination. He didn't get the nomination, obviously. But his name was Alan Keyes. And I remember watching that debate that he was in, and somebody asked a question. It was a political debate, but they were asking a question that could have been coming from this point of view, especially the social disorganization point of view. It was a question about crime, or a question about illiteracy or inner city culture or something like this. And Alan Keyes, I remember, said that we don't have an American creed. He used the word creed, like something to believe in, something that we all buy into and believe in and work for because it's important to us. He talked about how, yes, there are different racial groups, yes, there's different economic groups, and right now we have like kind of aggression toward each other. I think he was talking about especially like the disconnect between wealth and poverty, and so often impoverished people hate or think they hate, millionaires or billionaires or something, because of the haves or have-not situation. And he said, really, we just need to agree that all of us are Americans, and Americans have the same fundamental values, and we need to establish and agree upon a fundamental creed that we can all live by, and that will be an equalizer for all of us, and we can feel like we have unity among these dispersed groups and or disparate groups, and move forward as one nation. And so I'm paraphrasing a lot, and this has been a long time ago when I remember hearing him say this, and I don't, I can't even tell you the year, but you can, look it up, and maybe there's video clips of this someplace where you can hear his argument. But he came from a social disorganization standpoint where we need to buy into a common purpose that we can put aside differences. We can glorify our differences and be proud of our differences, but have one common thread that we all cling to and know that we're connected because of that, and unite around that thread and move forward peacefully. And so these are two of the common ways of looking at social problems, explaining them, and proposing fixes for them if you are a sociologist who uses functionalism or structural functionalism as your parent point of view. Okay, and in the next video, we're going to look at conflict theory or social conflict theory that some of you recall, and we'll review it briefly and talk about that point of view. Bye.